HDFC, the familiar home loan provider, has passed into history. Yes, it lives on in HDFC Bank, into which it was merged, but the iconic company and stock that it was ceases to exist. The company started 46 years ago with a paid-up equity of just 10 crore rupees and touched at its height a market cap of 5 lakh crore rupees. That is what, a 5,000 times growth in 45 years? 45 years, during which it helped millions of Indians build their first homes and thousands of shareholders make many millions in wealth. Today I have with me two people who built this company literally brick by brick, or shall I say deposit by deposit or loan by loan. Keki Mistry, the last Vice Chairman and CEO of the company, and Renu Karnad, the last Managing Director of the company. Mrs. Karnad and Mr. Mistry, thank you very much for joining us. Really a pleasure that you should come by. Mrs. Karnad, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
Because you were literally present at the creation, 1978. Tell us how it felt, what was the first milestones you remember?
Oh, the first milestone for me really was the first loan that we disbursed.
Okay.
So, though we were incorporated in October of 77, by the time we were ready to actually make a disbursement, get the applications in, it was September of 78. And that's when we disbursed our first loan. I started my life in HDFC in the legal department. Since I was in the legal department, I was the one who was supposed to do the disbursement.
Okay.
And gave a loan to one gentleman called Mr. Remedius.
Oh.
And he built a small house. It was a self-construction house. I think we also have a picture of that house in, our archives somewhere. And it was at that time one honestly didn't realize what were we stepping into and what were we going to create. I think it's only later as we started seeing the reaction of customers coming in and literally holding us in awe in terms of the way we did our business. And, if somebody asked us, in how many days will I get a loan? And we would say about 2 months. And they used to be so thankful.
Yeah.
In this digital age, they want, the money in 2 hours. So 2 months, because everything else used to take 10 months and 8 months. It was wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, I heard that story from Narayan Murthy himself. That he couldn't believe that he and Sudha Murthy could actually get a loan in, just a few days. He thought maybe there's a catch somewhere and I'm missing it.
Yes.
Mr. Mistry, you joined when things were a little more stable. 1981, you tell me. But
Slightly
even then, yeah, but even then, I can't remember that far, but I would assume that a job in State Bank or in one of the foreign banks would have been far more
So
attractive.
Latha, when I used to work with Indian hotels, and they wanted me to go to Goa as chief accountant because they were setting up a new hotel in Goa. And my mother was all alone and she was staying with me, and I didn't want her to sort of stay back. So I decided that I would leave Indian hotels and join some other company. Okay. So at that time there were a multitude of offers. There was an offer from Citibank, there was an offer from HDFC, and there were 2 other offers which frankly I didn't consider. So the primary thing was either Citibank or HDFC. Then I thought Citibank is such a large multinational, it's such a huge organization, I'll be playing a very small part in that huge organization. HDFC was a young fledgling company. Our auditors were the same, Indian Hotels and HDFC's auditors were the same. So the partner in charge said this is a great company. So I went for the interview. I was interviewed by the then general manager, Mr. Nagendra and Deepak Parekh. And I liked both of them. I liked the way of, I liked what they were thinking or what they were contemplating. So I just decided I'll join HDFC.
Okay. Well, so that's Citibank's lost twice over, huh? Even Aditya Puri left Citibank to come to HDFC's fold, and you as well.
But I never thought that I would work 40 years in one company, very honestly.
So what led on? What kept the passion?
Yeah, I think 2-3 things happened. People, there were offers which came later on. One or two multinationals, one very large conglomerate wanted, which was the only time I was a little tempted, to be honest. But having said that, I think the work environment in HDFC was so nice, so conducive, free of politics. Anyone and everyone was free to go and meet whoever he or she wanted to meet. So there was a sense of pleasure, a sense of feeling good when you came to HDFC. And I always decided that if ever it comes to a situation where on a Friday evening I say, thank God we got 2 days of holiday, and on Sunday evening I said, God, I have to go to work, that's the day you have to quit. That never happened. Wow. In 40 years, that never happened.
That sounds a little bit like CNBC-TV18, but no, this is the story of HDFC. Mrs. Karnad, okay, let me come to slightly more, lower down the journey. At what time, at what point did you feel that this is something big? I mean, you may not have felt that in 1978. Even then, there were big companies like Reliance and SBI and IOC and ONGC. But at some point, you all are the big league. When did you get that feeling?
I would say, would have been somewhere in the early 80s when all of a sudden you realized that you were really a monopoly at that time.
Okay.
And the change that you could make in middle class India, I would say it was middle class India then, and what you were contributing, it was in some ways a very social product that you were bringing in. At the same time, you were also making sure that you continued to be a profitable company, doing this business in a manner in which, there was a win-win for all.
Absolutely.
And the part that, Latha, when we were a monopoly actually, that time you realized that all of India was your game. We could start lending anywhere, different stratas of society. Even today when you look back, and I, also say today also, for the next 5-10 years, housing is going to continue and continue and continue. And here we were the only ones, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We realized that, what is the strength of that product?
Okay.
And I think from there, we started growing. Of course, changing from just being a one-product company and becoming a conglomerate that we are today happened much later. That happened.
I'm coming to that story in a minute. But I wanted to ask you, since you joined the legal department, this is probably more your question. My father used to tell me this, and I thought even in my earlier years I have sensed this. It wasn't safe to rent a house, for an owner to rent out his house because of the Rent Act, and the tenants wouldn't go away. So there were problems, and for you to repossess a house if someone defaulted, how did you manage through all these legal shocks, as it were?
So is that addressed to me?
Yes, Ms. Karnad, to you.
So, Latha, very honestly, if most of our people, and even now maybe it's lesser, were people buying homes for living in it themselves. And that was the problem of renting out and not being able to get the property back really didn't exist, because you won't believe it. Somewhere in the 6th or 7th year, when somebody used to tell us that he's going to rent out the house, we used to say, okay, but then we will charge you 0.5% extra. You will get 0.5% extra to rent out. So it was actually occupation and ownership for the reason that they couldn't get, particularly in a place like Bombay. You couldn't get a place to live. You couldn't get a place on rental. Exactly for the reasons that you were talking about. The laws.
Okay.
The laws were so pro the tenants at that time that people were not building to rent. People were all buying
that actually
to rent.
Worked in your favor.
Buying to live. And that really worked in our favor. And one more little thing before you ask another question. We had no foreclosure laws.
Yes.
For the first 15 years. That is where I want to tell you what Mr. H.T. Parekh, who actually, he was the one who thought of it, and there's enough written about that. But his faith in the Indian middle class, if you gave them something like a house that, despite not having all the legal, plethora of legal rules that you could go and use, the Indian middle class was trustworthy, and the Indian middle class would pay. We actually built our own business on that one sense.
Okay. So that's good to hear. My first HDFC loan was 1992. Just have to be married to take a loan. So yeah, you can say, at that time you want a roof over your house, and you're very honest about that. But that brings me to the finance part, Mr. Mistry. First, did you not find the competition from banks? Because banks have savings products. Their money is so cheap.
See, you keep talking about over the years competition from banks, and I kept telling you all the time that the growth opportunities are so huge, so enormous in India, that all banks can come and do housing loans, but still there'll be enough growth available for everyone. Now, you talked about banks having access to low-cost savings, current accounts, all of that. The fact of the matter is we operate with a very low-cost structure. Our cost-income ratio was single-digit. Way back in early 2000s, I would say late 90s, when we used to meet investors, we said we have 4 clear goals that we have in mind. And one of those goals was to increase the return on equity every year by 100 basis points, which we managed to do. You know, for nearly 15 years, if you go back, our return on equity was at least 1 percentage point higher than what it was in the previous year
before. Wow.
So this is despite competition. Competition from banks, to my mind, started in 97. And then really started peaking up, I would say, from early 2000s. But there is so much scope to grow. The last 2 years, if you look at the growth of housing loans for HDFC and for the banking system, we have grown at a rate which is faster than the growth in the banking system.
No, but I'm not done with the finance question.
Yeah, sure, please.
I have to take a break, but I've got a more challenging finance question after this break.
Sure.
Welcome back to the HDFC story. I've been speaking to Renu Karnad and Keki Mistry, 2 people who were literally present at the creation and saw this 45-year-old institution grow up and finally merge into its own baby, HDFC Bank. Okay, Mr. Mistry, before the break, you were telling me that, you know, even if banks had cheaper money, and I've always asked you that question, you'll always increase your ROE by 1%. See, I can understand that through the 90s, because even banks were charging 15% PLR. Rangarajan's time, I remember 17, 18, I was already a reporter then.
That was a long back.
Yeah, but in the early 2000s, the banks were giving loans at 7%, etc. You know, when interest rates really fell.
See, Latha, 7%.
Then how did you compete?
7% was an aberration. That was at one point of time when there was a teaser rate loan product. No, 2008-9.
8 also.
The financial crisis. Otherwise, rates have been stable. Apart from that one period of time when the economy needed to be revived after the global financial crisis, when I thought rates were unreasonable for a short period of time, otherwise there has been complete sensible rates, no irrational competition in the market, and that's what has enabled us to grow and keep increasing managing our profits, our margins. If you look back historically over the last 20 years plus, our margins have not changed within a band of say 20 or 30 basis points.
Mrs. Karnad, you know, were you party when the creation of HDFC Bank, HDFC AMC, you know, how did you all think of becoming a conglomerate? In 94 first, and then 2000, when the AMC and the insurance company came in?
So very honestly, Latha, if you remember, banks were nationalized,
yes,
right? And nobody in the private sector could have thought of it. The moment that opened up, by the time we had a brand that we'd created, we had huge trust of customers, massive trust from customers. And I think, very honestly, if you ask me now, it's not that we don't have their trust today, but at that time it was literally HDFC and government, they would think of us, you know, the same. We were so safe. So at that point in time, I think the then management and the board thought, why not? Why not set up a bank? But would you believe it, Latha? We were small. The capital that we required was 200 crores. And we said, oh God, 200 crores. We couldn't get 200 crores. We didn't have 200 crores. And therefore we brought in partners, right? So that is how we thought of it, that we have the brand, we have good customer service, we have people who believe in us. So why not get into something which is going to go so close to the Indian public? And that's how it was thought of.
Okay.
A similar thing happened with insurance.
Yeah, in insurance, you all were the first private sector is HDFC standardized.
You know, even in banking, the 2 licenses that were there for private sector banks was ICICI and HDFC. And in insurance, HDFC and ICICI. Yep. On the same day, actually, Satharlikar and I went and picked up our approval from the Insurance Regulatory Authority in Delhi. So it was the same reason. Why not? I mean, at that time it was that if insurance, LIC had started housing, right?
Yes.
If LIC can get into housing, why can't we get into insurance?
Okay.
So it was basically these questions that, made us, I think it was just our confidence in our brand, confidence in our delivery, and in the Indian public.
No, actually the market reflected that confidence. Ever since I was reporting in debt markets, you all are, Mr. Mistry, always 30 basis over sovereign?
Usually, I mean, it varies from time to time.
Yeah, I know. During difficult times, maybe it goes to 50, but otherwise, in fact, the thinnest difference over the sovereign.
Yeah, in difficult times, it actually improves because then there's flight to safety.
Oh, I didn't think
but
of that.
Just to add to what Renu said, I think the opening up of the financial sector in 1992 created so many opportunities, whether it was banking, life insurance, general insurance, and we were just perfectly suited. As Renu said, tremendous confidence from customers. We had the reach, we had the ability, we had the brand, and we said, why not make a mark?
I think about the only FD we had in our house was HDFC FD. For my mother-in-law as well, because otherwise, you trust the bank FD a little more, even if it pays less. And I think one big point which Mrs. Karnad mentioned, it was the ease. Even if it was a slightly lower percentage point in terms of interest elsewhere, the fact that, it got done with so much fewer hassles was something that worked.
All credit to our people.
Yes, for just that handful of 4,000 to 3,000 people. Mr. Mistry, the other thing which occurred to me, especially, for you, since you said you also rejected a Citibank offer, did you feel like heading the bank or the insurance company or the AMC?
No, 100% no. 100%.
Because they went on to become bigger entities.
Heading the bank, it was a job of a banker. Okay. None of us in HDFC had banking experience. Insurance, Satwalekar, who was my predecessor, he started the life insurance company. So, frankly, no interest.
Okay.
Absolutely no interest.
Okay. Mrs. Karnad, would you say there were any tense moments? From my vantage point as a reporter covering, I can't think of any tense moments. But did you all have any?
Oh, yes.
Of course.
It was not
9/11 or something?
No.
9/11 was still external. It happened elsewhere, right?
Okay, internal.
If you ask me, the most tense, and Keki can add his, was when the banking system, the private banks, actually entered housing and started doing housing in a manner that we weren't able to do because, A, we were very cost conscious. At that time, I think we were all of 700 or 800 people, or maybe 1,500. And another private bank which had started housing had more than, had half of those in just one market. And we were very conscious of our costs. We were very conscious of how do we hire, and they came with a bank. I don't think we had much of a problem on interest rates, but it was just a competitor which was so in terms of hiring, they could hire as many as they wanted. Their salaries were higher. I think those were some moments, I wouldn't say tense, but moments where we had to reinvent ourselves, Latha. We were a company, and I must say this, I must admit it, we were a company where institution where people came to us, okay? Yes. You wanted a housing loan, you came to us. We didn't have to market. We didn't have to spend money on advertising. We were a huge pull factor. All of a sudden, overnight, we had to learn how to market, how to do sales, how to be in the, on the ground. And I must say we did very well for ourselves. And considering the number of people we were reaching out. And it proved that whatever we did in a very clear, sustained manner, at the end of it, we were able to ward off banks, foreign banks. We still continue to really be a leader in terms of mortgages even today. And now everybody and their uncle is into mortgages.
That's exactly what I was asking you. It was not just that interest cost of a bank is, savings.
We had to reorient.
Look at the reach of SBI. Look at the reach of even ICICI. Or for that matter, HDFC Bank, although they were not competing with you all.
So I think Renu put it very rightly that we were used to people coming to us. Now we had to go and reach out to people. So it was a moment of revelation. It was a moment of change. And that's the time we started a 100% subsidiary called HDFC Sales. Okay. And the role of HDFC Sales was really to go to the markets, get business and bring it to us.
Okay, fair enough.
But there were other challenging moments.
Which one?
In terms of funding, huge challenging moments. If you ask me, the first biggest challenge was after the first 10 crores of capital was used up. Because then where do you get money to lend money? Where to give loans? Because the banking system in India did not have confidence in the legal. There was no legal framework to recover.
The foreclosure laws.
So people would come and say, we'll give you money today, but how do you know you'll recover your money and pay us back? So that is when a loan from LIC, a 10 crore loan from LIC, and a $4 million loan from IFC, which ultimately turned out to be the costliest borrowing we ever did in history, proved to be a savior. And after that, frankly, there was no looking back.
Yeah, because the dollar went through the roof, so I suppose paying that back was huge. But thereafter, you didn't have funding challenges at all? After
Maybe slightly, twice. 1992, when the whole economic change was happening. India was going through a very difficult period, as you may recall. And that's the time we started this deposit program, where we said that what we can give quality everything, but what customers need is on-the-spot service. So we initiated a system where a customer would get a deposit application form, and across the counter he would get a deposit receipt. So that was a bit of a change in the Indian market in the context of what used to be prevalent in 1990.
Absolutely.
And I think the third one would have been during 2008-2009 for a short period of time. The global financial crisis.
Absolutely. Mrs. Karnad, how difficult was it to deal with land sharks? I mean, you all were also dealing with real estate people. It's not, or at least was not, the cleanest of business. Now RERA has cleaned up a bit, but it's a tough job, isn't it?
Yeah. So one of the things that Latha, in the beginning we did was 2-3 things. First of all, actually, who are we dealing with? Which builder were we willing to fund? Anybody that we decided to fund, we used to make sure that if they had the land, that they owned the land, and we were not giving money to buy land, and so we were giving money to actually construct, the housing there. Yeah. We never gave money, at that time, especially upfront. We insisted that the builder or whoever the developer had a skin in the game. Okay. So at least 40% or so of the amount would come from them. We kept a keen eye on how the construction was going up. Okay. We would not disburse money so that they could take it out and put it elsewhere. And it was a very minutely, overseen, supervised process that we followed. And since we were new to it, we were very selective on who we did it with. And we made sure that the title to the properties that we funded was always absolutely clear. Even in our retail funding, Latha, we most probably can give you a lower rate. We can empower our people to give you a slightly higher amount, provided it's within the regulations. But if there's a title issue, no, not even me, was allowed to actually bypass that. So we stuck to that very, very carefully.
Okay. Well, I'm told I'm out of time, so rapid fire. Best moment.
Best moment. Sorry, go ahead. Renu, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mrs. Karnad.
You go ahead.
All right. So I would say when our market cap crossed 5 lakh crores.
Oh, wow. That was as recently as a couple of months back.
No. It was a year ago.
2022, yes. Mrs. Karnad?
So my best moment was when our loan book, for the first time crossed 3 lakh crores. Oh. But then after that it went much higher. But it was a big amount at that time. Yeah, but also my first moment, I think, was where, we took on competition. And it's a small thing, I tell you. We had a exhibition going on in Delhi. It was the first exhibition we ever had. And we were absolutely ambushed by our competitor. And we fought it out so well that, at the end of the day, we managed to get them out. I think somewhere we realized that we had arrived and we could fight the market and we were not just sitting there and allowing the market to take us over. I think that was...
Your persona exudes that, Mrs. Karnad. Okay, what next, Mr. Mistry? We see you already in a lot of boards. So that's there.
So there are a few people who come with offers for boards, which I'm looking at. We'll take a call later. And there's something entrepreneurial one needs to do. Maybe not immediately. Give it a 6-month, 9-month break. And then at the end of the day, some thoughts are there, but nothing crystallized.
Okay. Mrs. Karnad, we see you as an entrepreneur?
So very similar, actually. And, I don't know. What I'm really trying to see right now is we still have to steer, the home product within the bank. With the bank, it's new for the bank, so Keki and I are going to be on the board. And so, being on a bank board restricts you from doing some other things for a short while. So while we get over all that and make sure that, our housing book doubles in the bank in the next 2 years.
Oh, lovely.
Keki used to double it every 3.5 years, right?
Absolutely.
Now we should do it at least in 2.5 years. So let's see.
My God, Shashi Jagdishan is going to hug both of you.
He's got his KRA hand out of it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Karnad and Mr. Mistry.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure knowing you.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm glad to know that I'm going to continue to know you all in new avatars as entrepreneurs.
Thank you.
That's
That's the story.
Thank you.
Brilliant story of HDFC.